Morning, everybody. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here this morning. This is the first time we've held an event in our new office here in the Bower. So thanks very much for partaking and being a part of our first event here. And thanks for the weather for putting on a nice day for us. Hopefully that also adds a little bit of benefit for you all, waking up early and making your way over here. Thank you to our panellists for giving up their time today and in the days preceding. Really appreciate you putting in the thought and that you've put into it, and looking forward to hearing the insights that you've got to share with the audience here. And I hope it'll be useful. I hope that it'll be interesting. I've asked them to be sparky and have a few arguments to make it entertaining. But of course the objective is for all of you to take away some knowledge, some insights, some actions, perhaps some tools that you can explore, and some questions and answers that you can take back to your businesses as you get prepared for not only the next year but the next decade as we move into 2020. So I'll start with a few introductions from this end downward. Thank you very much for Jen for joining us from DeepCrawl.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you for partaking. And Joe from Binary Bear.
Welcome. We've
got a few Joes. Joe from NMPi on the other end. We've got Mike from M&S, thank you very much, and Fred from NMPi as well. So thanks so much. We'll be coming on to you very shortly. I'm looking forward to everything that you've got to say. I always say that the less I have to do as a host, the better the panel itself. So if I don't need to speak, if I walk out and make a cup of tea, then you're doing a really good job. So don't wait for me to introduce you. Just have a really good conversation amongst yourselves as we get started. So in the more or less 18 to 20 years that I've been dabbling with internet marketing, there's been a huge amount of change in search. It's always changing, perpetually, from the days of just 10 blue links on a desktop browser. But the pace of change, I think, has never been faster than it is currently. Consumers are changing the way that they're interacting with search, from desktop to mobile, to speakers, to watches, to cars, to all sorts of devices. The devices are changing, the questions, the language that users are using is changing as a result of that as well. And that's natural, that's normal. And we see those changes in the data that we obviously have access to. And consumers, I think, often don't even know that they're searching anymore. What's the weather like today? What's it going to be like this weekend? Is the nearest shop open that I'm looking for? A pair of Nike shoes. The way that we engage with search has changed so much over the years. And it's really driven by consumer need and, of course, the search engines, predominantly our friends at Google, meeting that consumer need. But, of course, that change creates a lot for us as marketers to think about and to respond to. Where do we go next is always a question that we need to be asking. We see consumers, if anyone would like to take out their mobile phone, perhaps a couple of people on each row, you'll see how much search has changed and how much Google has responded to the way that users search across the devices, the language, and the types of searches that they're doing. You'll see much more nuanced results because of the more nuanced engagement. Somebody take out their phone and just search for the three-letter word pug. And you'll see not only do we have images and videos, but if somebody could just take out their phone and search pug, or a few of you, you'll see we also have 3D animals in our search results now.
That's really cute.
Share that with a few of the people around you as well so you can... Right there in the search results. So you've got 3D animals right there on your page on your mobile. And of course it begs the question, what next? Okay, put your phones away now. Back up to the front. Back up to the front. So all of this change is great for consumers, but does it create a threat for businesses? Because change we need to respond to. We need to respond to it quickly. We see the increasingly walled gardens of Reddit and LinkedIn and, of course, Google. And Google, of course, having the biggest impact, I think, on all of us in the room when they make a change. And we see the decline of organic traffic to websites. Most most frequently and I think most popularly documented by Rand Fishkin, who over the years has documented the decline or the change in organic traffic and paid traffic from search results. And a particular detail is that almost 15% of all searches on Google now click through to Google's own properties. The images, the mortgage search calculator, the shopping tab, for example. They all 15%. And at 35%, don't click anywhere. They give you the answer right there on the page. There's zero-click searches. See lots of nods here. I think this is the challenge we're going to talk a little bit about. There's zero-click searches that didn't exist just a few years ago. They exist in there's zero-click searches where the results come up in the knowledge panels. If you search for a movie, it will show you other movies. It will show you the actors. It will show you other dogs on the pug page there that you just looked at. So great for consumers, but is that a threat for business? Well, there's a travel aggregator part of Google, and of course we've just seen Expedia release their Q2 results, which have not been very good for Expedia. They've been actually quite bad. And they put the majority of the blame on Google's own travel aggregator service. So part of that 15% going to Google's own property. So clearly there's a problem there. So it's great for consumers, all of this change, faster results, pugs on the page, all that good stuff. But is it good for businesses, and how do businesses react? So what are the challenges and what are the pressures on the business? Down to the panel.
Well, I think that people forget that Google is a business themselves. Google isn't here to serve us as other businesses. Google is our #1 competitor, right? It's their game and we're all just playing in it. And at the end of the day, Google's aim has always been to create a positive user experience and answer that search query as best and as efficiently as possible. And watching them build out their own properties, they're doing exactly that. You know, this has not been any secret. I mean, they blatantly state this on the Webmaster blog. So I think that it's a matter of how do we focus on our own businesses and ensuring that we're doing best by our own customers and creating those positive user experiences, which we have to figure out a way to circumvent Google. I think the other thing too is it begs to put way more emphasis on brand building these days. Because if you're losing out on your organic traffic, is there an opportunity for you to capitalize on more direct traffic by people searching for your brand name? Mm-hmm.
Interesting, and I'm going to put that straight to Mike, of course. How does Marks & Spencer's thinking about brand building in that regard?
Yeah, it's huge. So above the line is not going away anytime soon. I think the introduction of favicons into the search results as well, where people can see your brand logo right there, really plays into that. Addition, really recent, and that goes back to if you recognise a big name brand in the search results, that's got its own click-through rate power. You know, that's only going to benefit you, as well as, you know, people not even going direct to Google. If people are starting on Google, there's another website in front of your website that you've got to compete with. So it's like with those, like saying with flights. If people are starting their search for flights on Google, they've not come straight to you. They don't think you're the place to go. So if you can get them to skip Google straight to you, you don't even have to compete in the search space. So yeah, I'd agree there.
Interesting. Joe, you talk about the search space being the new homepage.
Yeah, totally. I think it's the shift from traditional SEO of content, links, and technical excellence, and I still think that's really, really important in the world of SEO. But it's becoming much more about the whole search experience and owning that SERP. It doesn't just start on Google's results page. It starts with your videos, your social pages, and you'll hear a lot of people now talking about building your entities and connecting those dots for Google to really help inform its knowledge graph. And building your own brand knowledge graph is probably how you need to be thinking about developing your strategies over the next few years. And the guys are totally right. You know, I don't know what Expedia's strategy was, but focusing more heavily on Expedia, building them as an identity within the travel space that people go directly to them for all of their queries, as opposed to flights to Italy, cheap hotels, and building that experience for their customers and users.
Joe, what do you think has been the impetus for the change? Are we over-egging the pace and the increase in the pace of change, or has there always been this pace?
Well, I think Jen mentioned it earlier on. You know, it's squarely there in the business objective of Google is to make the world's information accessible to all, and if they can do that without giving you a click, you know, they will do that. You know, if they think that's better for the user, then why should they send you that traffic? I think the issue from Rand Fishkin you mentioned earlier on came from a talk you did at Brighton SEO about a year and a half ago, I recall. He said we had a deal, and the idea was we would allow Google to crawl our content, and in exchange for that we would get traffic. But obviously, Google, as Jen said, is a business, and if they think that they can answer the user query within the SERPs, then they're going to do that. I actually wrote a blog post about Rand Fishkin's talk because as a CRO, rather than SEO, the interesting thing is that it puts more impetus on us as brand owners, as designers and developers, if clicks are at a premium, to make more of that landing experience. And that means reducing friction, increasing engagement, making content easy for users to use and engage with, and bringing in actions like newsletter sign-ups or other forms of engagement to get people maximising what you can out of that visit.
So I'm going to stay with you because Google will say that the changes they're making are in the best interest of the user experience, and user experience is right in your center point of your target as a conversion rate optimizer. Is that true?
Well, I think if you think about the nature of the well, it is money, definitely about money. Yeah. But if you think about the nature of the queries that are mostly affected, it's things like, you know, perhaps kind of one-time or single-use queries like, are the tickets available for this show? What time does the train lead to Leeds? You know, what's the latest information about this flight? So, you know, the user doesn't want to be going to a brand site and wading through loads of information to find that. So if Google thinks that they can answer that within the SERPs, then they're going to do it.
I totally accept that, but I think it's about striking a balance, right? I think when it's all of Google's assets that are starting to be returned in those results pages, there was some data the other day about the videos that used to be returned in the SERPs were around 50% YouTube videos. And then in 2014, I think it was, that is now 96% YouTube videos. So whilst it's about turning the most relevant results, there is a balance for publishers to strike with Google in that content. Why should it be all Google's assets that are being returned? There should be value in working with other platforms and not just putting all of your eggs in one basket. I think that's the struggle.
But actually going back, Joe, it's still Google's platform that you are attempting to capitalize on.
Yeah. But
so why is it in Google's best interest to actually rank anything else other than the stuff that makes them money? If
they're talking about relevance, how are you judging why is a YouTube asset more relevant than a Vimeo, right? If you're putting the same content on both platforms, why are they optimizing their own assets? I you know, the cynical side of me says it's all about the market share and the money, but yeah.
I would also agree with that, but I think that going back to what you said with regards to brands building out their own knowledge graphs, one of the big things with BERT and bringing more machine learning into things is, you know, you were at an event that I was at on Tuesday, and they were talking about context and Google's abilities of being able to really understand context around things, right? And that comes through linking up entities and showing relationships. And so if you as a brand can actually capitalize on building your own knowledge graph, you're also playing Google's own game. Yeah. And again, as we made mention, you've got so many more feature snippets that are being prominent in the SERPs. You've got so many more opportunities to kind of jump the queue, if you will, and get into those coveted position zeros above all of those organic links. And that only comes through structured data, and structured data is now a massive component being thought of as part of your technical SEO strategy. So I think actually within it, it all just kind of comes full circle in some capacity.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
You're a fan of structured data, Fred.
Yeah, I am. So in some sense, I think I maybe disagree that Google are a competitor. I would say it's the environment in which we are like all inhabiting effectively. And the environment that we're in might sometimes, I don't know, chuck us a drought, chuck us a flood or whatever. But at the end of the day, we only have a few different choices in what we're going to do there. we can either run away and go play somewhere else. I think we can all agree that that's not something we can actually go do. It's where a lot of the revenue from our business
taking place in Europe in some spaces, right?
The other option is to I guess plan and project what's going to happen. That's very difficult because we don't get an insight into what Google's algorithm updates are until effectively the day of and months afterwards. So all we can really do is react to things. So if we're seeing structured snippets increase in the SERP, then we need to effectively react and move appropriately. That's going to effectively mean our competition is not Google, because it's the environment. Our competition is our other competitors. Like, how are we going to beat them out? If this is going to be the pattern that Google are going to follow, how are we going to make sure that we're going to be the ones that are going to be there?
So survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest.
Or that might. Richest.
Yeah. The other analogy I like is if you're you might have to partner with people in order to survive the environmental disaster. You might actually have to eat someone if it gets really drastic. That's cannibalization, possible. But effectively, it's about we've got to survive in this environment. And I feel like it's not going away. Someone might disagree, but I feel we'll still be playing in Google's playing field for a long time.
From what I understand, BERT's only really affecting about 10% of results at the moment.
Currently.
Yeah. Currently. And from what I understand, it's really down to Google's server infrastructure being able to cope with those types of queries. And clearly that's going to, their capacity is going to increase and it will expand into other areas.
May I interject with a point here? There's five people up here, or maybe 5.5, who know what BERT is, but could somebody please explain it for the audience, who BERT is or what BERT is? Who wants to take that one?
Anyone know what it stands for?
Anyone know what BERT stands for? Show of hands.
Something
A lot of massive words.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bidirectional is the B. Is it encoding in the E? Don't know what the R is off the top of my head. Relations. And then T is transformers, which is that new Google way of understanding sentences.
It's a very natural language that anyone would.
Everyone loves playing with BERT. I'll give my description of BERT. BERT is a way for Google to pre-train their own machine learning. So before they even start processing queries, they run their models on this new system called BERT, which is very good at understanding sentences. So the innovation there is supposedly that rather than looking at sentences in sequence, if it sees like the word bank, it will then look for other related words to try and work out what that bank is, whether it's a bank account or a river bank. It won't just go along the sentence in order, it will go back and forth, back and forth. That's my brief explanation of what BERT is. And personally, I think BERT is not going to be that impactful for what I do. I think it's the very long tail of the long tail. It's helping them understand really complex sentences and intent. I don't think that really translates down to the key head terms that we compete in sort of the retail space, like red dresses. I don't think it's going to help Google understand that query any more than it does today.
It's kind of a signal of the direction they're going with. I personally think voice search is a bit of a red herring at this stage, but is absolutely will be where we go. But the BERT kind of sends the signal as to what Google thinks and how we are going to be interacting with these devices, and understanding those contextual pieces is really important for providing those answers, right?
Yeah, and Google's own blog, talking about the introduction of BERT, says something like, we want people to be comfortable in using natural language and not just keywordese,
exactly,
which is the phrase that they use, which is, if you think people have got used to joining together three unrelated phrases and making a set of keywords, actually now a more conversational approach to search and asking your interface real questions as if you would to a human being. That's the way that a lot of these long-tail queries are going.
Yeah, for me it ties back into that stat that Google always, it's been a couple of years since they mentioned it, but about 15% of the searches that Google sees in a year, it's never seen before. So Google's constantly, rapidly trying to work out what people are even asking them. So I think these algorithms are looking more at the wider spread usage of Google, especially when people start moving to voice search and they start umming and things like that in the middle of their sentences. Or with mobile, personally, I hit the full stop instead of a space almost every time I type on mobile. Google's got to understand a bunch of misspells, a bunch of new things. So it's constantly working on its own models to understand what anyone's typing in.
Need to understand drunken stuff.
Yes.
And also the mistakes that people make when they say the word Google and it picks up on their mobile device or their speaker and they hadn't intended? How do they discount those from their data as well? So very, very interesting. There's obviously a lot of change, and I think somebody said, you know, we often don't know about the changes in SEO until the day in which they're announced. How can marketers equip themselves with technology tools and data to be best prepared when these events come around and these changes happen?
Well, I don't think that you can ever actually, as Maeve mentioned, you never really know when the algorithm has fully been launched until it's the aftermath of it being launched. But I think, as we were talking about too, when you are playing in Google's game, you've got to watch the moves that they're making outside of just the SERPs and outside of just algorithm updates and things of that nature. You know, Bill Slawski has a fantastic blog based out of the US, and all he does is he monitors the patents that Google's taking out. He takes
what's his name?
Bill Slawski.
Bill Slawski, if anyone wants to write that down.
His blog is called SEO by the Sea. It is nothing pretty, I will give you that, but it has some of the most fantastic information around Google, their patents and things of that nature. He's a really brilliant man who's been in the space for quite some time, but you know, by following what Google's doing kind of underneath the radar as best as you possibly can, that gives you indication as to the direction that they're going, and then it allows you to be a bit more proactive as opposed to always having to be reactive to the algorithm updates.
How else can we be proactive? Do we just need to throw money at the problem, Mike?
Proactively throw money when the problem happens. So, no, it's the readying for what Google's constantly talking about. When Google's starting to mention speed a lot more and they continually ramp it up, you'd be crazy to not pay attention to the speed on your own site, things like that. Google subtly mentions stuff before, that, like you say, that there's always forecasting ahead of time that something's really going to happen and that they're going to start pushing for it more and more. I think Google has that sort of position of change, of sort of evoker, internet police, whatever you call them, forcing change on websites is only going to ramp up and up and up. Like the announcement for HTTPS when they started just changing Google Chrome to make everyone's websites just say a warning. Same's coming for speed very soon. If your website's slow, you're going to get a warning for all your users that your website's slow. I think we'll see more and more of that in Google space, where they force out the changes they want to see just to make their own lives easier in their other products.
I think Google has got a lot better though. I mean, when I first got into SEO, there were no warnings. There was no, you know, at least now there is Danny Sullivan, and they're giving updates as to things are happening, and this is a bit more information about those updates. Whereas before there was no communication from Google about anything that was going on. The algorithm was like a massive black box. So I think there has been a shift with Google trying to inform the community as much as they can. But sometimes when they're trying to do that as well, people read into bits that aren't there, and it starts a whole debate that probably isn't really relevant.
Well, have you... Sorry, Joe, didn't mean to cut you off. Has anyone also noticed how much marketing-related content Google started pushing out into the SEO space? I mean, with Martin Splitt doing all of the various videos and the myth-busting and the amount of exposure that we're now seeing from Google, from again, like you would consider that marketing content, I think it's quite a tell that Google understands the necessity of being able to help support the search marketing community as much as possible, because it is to their benefit. I think that, again, they're still very, very vague in the information that they give us, and it really irritates a lot of people in this industry. But again, at the end of the day, Google needs to give us just enough but not too much so that they kind of show their hands.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, right?
Yeah.
Really hard.
It's the definition of frenemies, isn't it?
Correct.
They look supportive, they're not necessarily actually supportive. Or you get an update on a Sunday night that says we're rolling out an algorithm this week, and you're like, okay, that's my week.
Or
Joe, you were going
all I was going to say was, I think you're in the death throes now of search as purely a tactic to get traffic as an acquisition, and actually we're at the end of a long process where it's much more strategic. And actually search should be at the heart of all your other marketing efforts, particularly your digital marketing efforts. But you still see the companies I work with, these silos between different teams. You know, especially in larger organisations, we take an issue like site speed. I've seen this where you've got a challenge like site speed is of interest to me as a CRO. It's a massive interest. to you as an SEO, and then these teams just are not talking to each other, they're not collaborating on problems that they know that they can get together and solve.
Yeah, I think this is exactly the issue. Silos and siloing your data. If you're trying to effectively react to Google, you're trying to react to Amazon, and you're only using the data from Google or the data from Amazon to then react to those, then you're never actually going to get anywhere. So it's about pulling all your data sources together, about effectively bringing your search data, your paid data, your organic data, as all the data you can into one realm. And then at that point you can give yourself you give yourself a better chance of actually being able to compete or even fight in that space.
It's a big cultural shift in a lot of organisations, and especially companies that come from bricks and mortar, or not especially, but some companies that come from bricks and mortar, they've always done things in a certain way. Everything's led by brand marketing. Digital's kind of, we need to box tick doing digital. Where actually we're talking about a complete reorganisation about the way you operate your business with digital at its heart. And some people are going to be winners and losers in that environment. So the organisation is scary stuff.
Yeah. You've spoken about Crow and SEO as two distinct specialisms, but let me challenge that. Are they really one and the same now?
I don't know whether they're necessarily really one and the same, but they should definitely, Crows and CROs and SEOs should definitely be collaborating more. And I think sometimes you do get this conflicting advice, and I'll give you a specific example. We've heard for many years, SEO best practice is always to write long-form content. We've heard that for a long time. And I think some of the feeling with BERT is that's probably not going to be the case, because you don't need to write an enormously long paragraph with alternate keywords put into it. As a CRO, for years we've been saying that can't be right, because we're watching hundreds of hours of user sessions on Hotjar or one of the other tools, and people just scrolling through it. They're not reading that stuff. How can that be good for user experience? So, site speed, length of content, does it answer the question that the user wants to know in a timely manner? These are important questions, and by collaborating, I think CROs and SEOs can solve that problem.
Yeah, totally. Breaking down those silos, if you think about how much of a headache dev teams are to SEO teams, we need to break down those silos to get closer to them, and I think breaking down those silos to get closer to the UX is the other side of it as well.
And we as I've worked for lots of agencies, and agencies have got a responsibility in this, because the number of times I've seen somebody come into an agency and say, I want to buy 2 kilos of SEO, and they go, great, here's 2 kilos of SEO.
Yeah.
They don't say, well, why do you want 2 kilos of SEO? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And actually, maybe with the skills we've got in front of us, we can build the solution that's correct for you. And it will involve some SEO, it might involve some paid, it might involve some outreach. People answering questions and solving problems, not selling people services.
Yep.
It depends how the end goal of SEO ultimately. If you're just aiming to drive traffic, then CRO and SEO could be totally at loggerheads. But if at the end of the day you're trying to increase your revenue through SEO, you'd be crazy to ignore CRO. It's about getting people at the right point through that funnel to start off with, and then what happens when they're on the site. It's a whole other question. It's no use getting through a load of customers that are never going to convert because your page is totally not optimized. But equally, it's not worth having a super optimized page that no users have ever got to.
That's right.
So it's the fine balance.
Question for you, sorry to put you in the hot seat, but how closely do you, as an SEO, work with your internal UX teams?
Fairly closely. Some of it is the battle, some of it is the content versus no content, and there's much we can do to improve that. And we have separate site optimization and UX teams, so we work in tandem with both of them on quite a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, it's finding the balance in between the two. We can't always get our way, and hopefully they don't always get their way either, otherwise we'd have content-free pages. Same with like call to action buttons as well.
Yeah.
Call to action is very good for conversion, but it's not necessarily the best to, fit the right anchor text throughout your site, shall I say.
Momentary pause and see if we've got any questions from the audience. Would anyone like to throw in a question at this point?
I do.
Yeah.
We all focus on Google, purely Google. What are your thoughts on videos, particularly YouTube? I know I mentioned that a little bit, because I think Google is saturated with content being published. There's about 7 million blog posts published every day. If you go to YouTube, it's also quite popular, but I think it's a much softer market from as far as the vertical is concerned.
Yeah.
And I believe that most big brands just fail miserably when it comes to YouTube. And if I take the example of Marks and Spencer's, I'm not pointing fingers.
Feeling the hot seat here.
You've got like almost 900 videos on your channel, and yet you've got a massive bank of assets there that you could optimize. And I'm not sure what you're doing, but this is a massive opportunity to just drive interest and traffic. But what I find is brands who fail is because it's expensive to create videos, blah blah blah. But it's a fabulous asset which you can redistribute across multiple platforms, and yet it's not exploited. Just looking at the title of the videos alone, I just scroll through and I'm like, my God, you could literally spend some time doing that. And again, I'm not pointing fingers, because I think it's most big brands fail miserably. And I think moving forward, videos are definitely something that needs to be highly considered, because people don't read. You mentioned it, people scroll, they don't want to read, they want to watch, and they want to have solutions to their problems, but yet we don't mention that. I'm flabbergasted by that.
Yeah. So what can we do to optimize videos more effectively? Video and YouTube.
Create videos and exploit the platform, like YouTube. It's the second biggest search engine, right? We all know that. So.
Yeah. And in some countries it's #1, in India for example.
If you look at how brands are approaching YouTube, and you look at how the social influencers are approaching YouTube, there's a world apart, and I think the brands could learn a huge amount from how social influencers approaching YouTube, and they're optimizing their videos to gain interest. They're using those keywords, the approach to the images that they're putting on the videos. It's so polarized in the two, and I completely agree with you. YouTube is a massively missed opportunity for the majority of brands, and it doesn't take much to really start investing in those and getting some good traction on the YouTube platform. We know that that's a platform that the younger generations are much more engaged with, and that's how they like to consume information. So
it's actually very interesting, and you also have to take a look at consumer behavior, right? So the evolution of Google as a search engine has been around for much longer than YouTube has as a platform, right? And effectively at the back end of that, YouTube is still a search engine. You're just searching via the video-based content or the video format, right? And more and more, as you're saying, the younger generation who has grown up with devices in their hands, they're more inclined to watch a video of something than they are to actually read a long-form piece of content. And when you think about the evolution of Google as a search engine, historically it was always about written text, right? They were optimizing for keywords. They were matching an individual or sometimes 2 to 3 word keyword search against written content. And when you think about today, all of the various formats of content that we now have available online, I think a lot of brands are just slow to move that way and slow to adopt that, because it is a new medium and is a new format. But I couldn't agree more with you. It's expensive, but it is such an area that is yet to be capitalized on in the way that we as brands really could be. It's actually something that my team at DeepCrawl have really been focusing a lot on conceptualizing how do we utilize and leverage more videos in what we're doing from a brand perspective, and that's something we're putting tremendous amount of emphasis on for our 2020 strategy.
I wonder how much.
You're probably familiar with Ahrefs, right?
Of course.
They've got their own channel.
Yeah.
I think they've really improved the quality of the content that they're producing. I mean, they've got their very own blog posts and stuff like that. But I believe they've invested quite a bit of time and resources on their channel, and they're really benefiting from that. I've been following them quite a bit.
Tim does a great job.
The amount of subscribers and views they're getting through that, and their product that they sell on the back of it, with that shutting it down the consumer's throat. And that's, I think, that's what the big brands miss out on. They use YouTube to just say, buy this, buy that. People are not interested in that.
That is, oh, sorry, I was going to say, that is exactly it, right? That's the evolution of consumer buying behaviors. people don't want to be sold to. They want to engage and they want to interact. They want to have an experience with your brand. And then when they're ready to buy what it is that you are selling, they come to you. And I think that that's the reason why you don't see more brands engaging on YouTube and leveraging that video content, because they don't actually understand where the opportunity lies. And that, I think, comes from needing to do a lot more research on your target user personas or customer personas.
We'll have a separate panel on measurement and
yeah, we could.
That's for sure.
I think the engagement point is really important. If you go onto YouTube and you look at how many people are having conversations off the back of those videos, but yet none of the brands are present. They're not engaging with their customers. So,
go on, Mike.
It's coming from the M&S perspective. All good points, but M&S as a brand leverages its video assets much more brand-led. We're aiming to get the M&S brand out there. It's much less engagement at that level. There's a bit of social engagement, but far and wide our video strategy would always be get the M&S brand out there and seen. From a video perspective, again, it comes back to the idea of what is the point of a user that doesn't convert? If someone goes onto our video, is it the first time they've ever seen M&S? Probably not. Are we showing them any new product? Possibly, but how likely is that person to convert versus all of the other internet outlets we can go down? Where would we put our strategy, our time, our prioritization? We've only got so many people and so much money to go down. So yeah, that was why I say YouTube would not be a focus for us as a brand today.
But we're definitely talking about search holistically as an experience. Search experience optimization is something we're hearing more about now rather than search engine optimization. Am I in the right direction with that? Is search becoming more about the experience and not just about optimizing the engine to send traffic to the site?
I think there's something in that. I mean, you've got the opportunity for bricks and mortar brands with Google My Business and so on, where I'm working with a brand at the moment where they really haven't done much in terms of optimization of the Google My Business channel, to the point of their customers are answering questions for them in the SERPs. And they're not responding, and they're saying, is it open? No, it's not open. Oh, the customer service is terrible. You've got to be on that.
Yeah.
And I think this is the issue of prioritization. I mean, that really is on the SERP, and they are your customers are responding to you and leaving negative contents. That's the low-hanging fruit. You've got to do that one first.
But we mentioned the favicon change recently that started this year, and surely that's in some part helping to build brand on the search page, irrespective of a zero-click result, if you like, or no traffic going to the website. We spoke about videos that can be watched within the search results. Are there other opportunities that marketers can be taking advantage of to build their brand awareness and build their brand profile, whilst not necessarily benefiting from traffic through to site that converts into a sale on the same day?
It comes back to that informational featured snippet part of things again, doesn't it? It's if you can compete for those no-click spaces, if people are looking for just informational content and you can be the one providing it with your logo there, again, that is the long tail, that is a slow to convert user, but it can be there. It's building up that brand trust within the search results.
I think something, we obviously fighting for those spots is going to be vital, and something that we've been toying with and struggling with on our side as we look to kind of run search holistically, is if you are driving for that zero spot, how do you then go and measure the success of being there?
That's a question. Success in SEO could be its own panel.
Reverse question, actually. What's the opportunity cost of not being there?
At this stage, that is the thing that we've got to try and toy with, which is how do we measure the success of that zeroth click, whether it is be there or be there not. And at the moment, as far as I'm aware, no one's come up with the answer to that one.
How is the search? We spoke about data and how data is being used, and obviously DeepCrawl is a source that marketers can use. The Search Console is a source that marketers can use. How has the Search Console data evolved, and how can marketers use that now if they're not currently? And what do you expect in the future in the evolution of the Search Console?
Better platform.
It is a better platform. It is a better platform now. Yeah.
It's in some spaces. I think in some areas it's gone backwards. They're trying hard to make it a better platform, but I think as they move forward, there's a bit that they've lost at the same time as well. I
think the search enhancement features are a lot better. Things like reporting on your product schema and both how much of it you have, how many errors you have, but also now you can see, are people seeing that? Are they interacting it? That's huge. That's a big step forward when it comes to persuading dev teams to spend the time and resource to do it. If you can show a graph that is purely attached to that work and go, here's what you did, thank you, that helps buy-in, helps keep the trust, which is so key in SEO and organizations. You don't want to be the team that's just there recommending work for people and never really telling them if it did anything. So yeah, that side of Search Console is massive for me.
Fred, paid search can potentially help where SEO traffic is reducing. Should we really just focus our attention on buying traffic through paid search? And because obviously we added Google added a fourth link. So we're not just talking about the top 3, but the top 4 now.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes and no. It really depends on, I guess, you can look at things at a really micro scale, so you can look at down at like every single keyword level. And every single keyword you effectively need to work out whether it's incremental or not to be paying for that click. And it's about weighing up those two things. If you're in position 3, organically, is it worth being in position 2 paid, position 1 paid? Whatever happens, to do this at every single keyword level is very, very difficult because obviously you've got a mass amount of data. So the key is to effectively start using technology in this regard. So to actually pull in your Search Console data, pull in your paid data, all your data sources, and at the point that you merge them together and combine them, they're going to become much more powerful to use, and you can actually start measuring things like incrementality of being on paid, at what point being on a keyword is no longer incremental anymore, and allowing your organic team to try and pick up that traffic a bit more. And that's kind of the problem that we've been toying with a lot. Obviously, I've already mentioned that we've got one stumbling block, which is this, well, we've had many stumbling blocks, but just one major one is the zero click, and how we actually are going to measure that going forward.
So what kind of technology can help in that regard? Because, you know, tens of thousands of keywords, multiple devices, seasonality, multiple data sources coming in. It's beyond the ability of an individual, not only in their brain capacity, but just in time in a day. Yeah,
so I think when we talk about Google, we're talking about this machine, which is like a machine learning algorithm, whatever you want to call it, AI. And if you want to compete with something of that scale, or not compete, or even survive with something of that scale, the only way that you're actually going to be able to do that is yourself implement machine learning technology.
So the machine's taking on the machines.
I like to think of the search space as maybe one day being one of the first ever self-regulating AI systems who are just talking to each other, and then we're all just sitting there kind of watching on, just seeing what happens. It's a scary thought, but it could be.
Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think also too, like as we've talked about, like the practice of SEO is ever evolving, right? And so with that becomes sort of the know-how and the knowledge that SEOs have to have around so many various areas that infringe on UX, on CRO. Some of them are treading on the toes of like developers needing to learn Python and some other basic forms of code. Then they've got to also understand business metrics and performance, because I've been saying that SEO maybe should no longer be looked at as just a dedicated channel for traffic, but maybe it should be the when you look at it from a technical perspective, it should be the foundation for which the rest of your digital channels are all driving traffic into, and you should be optimizing for traffic regardless. So as that practice, you now have to pay attention to all of these various components and practices that are impacting SEO. The only way that you can stay on top of that is being smarter about it and bringing in automation. I think it has been a big trend for SEO, especially a lot of those repetitive tasks that SEOs have to go through, and potentially, you know, some of the keyword tracking and mapping stuff that you were talking about, Fred. You know, when you bring in automation and you start to leverage that in some capacity, that I think is also going to be a trend that you're going to start to see a lot more of, so that we can be more efficient with the finite time that we have as humans.
I think there's a layer of danger, and when it comes to saying that SEO and paid search to have hand-in-hand automation benefits, absolutely, on your own site. However, if you think about the approach to building a landing page for everything, they're not necessarily hand-in-hand strategies. SEO would want certain pages for certain things, and perhaps not a page for every single thing that a landing page for email or paid search might warrant. So there's a danger to automatically spinning up pages, something like that, which is something a lot of websites are going down the route of, that needs a bit of SEO guidance and steer. That there's still a caution, I would say, in saying all SEO work ties in nicely with every other channel. There's still a bit of conflict there. Same with CRO, that same idea.
Probably also too goes back to taking a look at your business and your business needs, right? No, just like websites and businesses, no two businesses are the same. You've got so many different variables that come into play that it's really about building a plan and building a strategy, I think, that benefits your users, your customers, and your business objectives at the end of the day, though.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I mean, things like automation, I mean, you know, you look at some of the stuff that sucks time out of the business, like, for example, you know, call centres, customer services, this sort of stuff, commonly asked queries, and if they could be answered from the landing page, that's obviously going to make a huge difference. And as Jen said, you need to be looking at the whole business rather than just, there's a channel, it's going to give us traffic.
Right, let's see if there's any more questions. Would anyone like to? Yes?
So a big fan of an integrated approach, which I think you've all been agreeing on.
Yeah.
In a world of an increasingly Amazon first customer, from a customer point of view, but also as a retailer, where you may choose to either directly compete or collaborate with Amazon. How does the presence of Amazon impact on the future of SEO?
Hugely. There's that stat around the amount of searches in America that start on Amazon without people ever going to Google. It's only growing as the everything shop.
50%, right?
Yeah, that's a crazy high number. So yeah, there's that same idea of a website in front of your website. Can you get them there? Amazon's playing in a very different space. We personally have an interesting relationship trying to battle it out on, for customers. It's that same idea before. If their brand is the biggest brand, people will start there. I don't know if Amazon fashion right now is up to speed with the rest of the market. They're certainly spending a lot of money trying to compete there, but I think that's because they aren't front of mind for where people are looking. I think if you're competing in the space where Amazon is the first place you go to, so something like selling electronics, I'd be a lot more concerned about Amazon and its competition in that space. If you're going to something like fashion, it again comes back to that brand building. What do people know you for? Do they start their journey with you or with Google as opposed to with Amazon?
From a data perspective, Amazon is a difficult one. I mean, the APIs that they leave available to people have less data in it than we might be used to from Google, and they do this. Well, I think they do this deliberately. They're setting up their walled garden and not actually allowing people to maybe do this thing where we do. And not only think about paid Google or organic Google, but we also think about Amazon all in one space, and we can manage them all in one together. At the moment, that's not really possible with what Amazon are giving us, so we would have to kind of treat them as two separate entities at the moment.
I think, and that where we talk about Google as the competitor versus the platform, Amazon are very much the competitor right now and not the platform, in a way. I think that might change.
Amazon is also a really interesting example too when you're talking about competitive space, right? Yeah. Amazon is a prime example of a brand that has beat Google at its own game, if you think about it. I mean, there's no other brand that competes with Google and takes away market share from Google the way that Amazon has, right? So they've fundamentally been able to crack the code of how you get around having to play Google's game on Google's playground.
That answer your question?
Not really.
No, go ahead. keep going. Keep digging.
My thought on it is I think you need to decide if they are a competitor or you're going to collaborate with them.
Yes. Yeah.
If they're a competitor, how do you make sure you do that? Establish yourself as a brand that people come through direct search as opposed to direct to as opposed to compete for. Because all I see is that Google's getting more and more expensive to compete upon, and will continue to do so. So what I'm thinking about is how do we do more awareness, brand awareness, so people come directly to us as opposed to having to pay for traffic increasing, because it's not a sustainable proposition for me. But then looking at Amazon, how do I think about it as how do I collaborate with Amazon? So what should I put on Amazon? and how do I then succeed in Amazon? So separately to my own organic strategy, what should I be doing on Amazon? Because when I look at the rankings for my brand, all I've seen over the last few years is that SEO, my natural search has also gone further and further and further down the page, and mobile's exacerbated that, videos exacerbated that. So I'm just thinking, how do I spread my risk and spread my expenditure to keep front of mind customer.
I think it's not the whole answer. An answer is it's obviously easier to maintain a relationship with customers you've already acquired than it is to get new customers, and this is where that kind of the whole CRM piece and getting people to engage with the brand and sign up for newsletters. We know that if you market to those customers, they're more likely to convert. It's not going to solve the problem with Amazon and Google, but it is going to, protect or ring fence some of your revenue.
I mean, the global stats I've seen show that traffic from email, transactional traffic from email over the last 3 or 4 years has gone like that. So whilst in theory that sounds like a really great approach, actually the revenues coming from that source seems to be getting less and less, unless you're a mega brand.
Yeah.
But it's not true of direct, so direct has increased. So I'm thinking in 2020, how do I get more direct to my site?
Yeah. Comes out to that wider marketing strategy piece. Well, I would say as well, it's worth saying that Amazon are a Google, they compete on Google themselves. They're one of our biggest competitors for space on Google, so it's not just competing against them in terms of do people start there. They're still very present in the Google results themselves. So they still are very much a competitor for the time being.
And of course, we saw Nike recently come off of Amazon, I think, and some of the reasons, of course, we won't know about, but two of them I think we do know about are the brand perception of Nike being on Amazon, albeit with a limited range that they had, and ownership of the customer and the customer data, which was very, very limited. So there's certainly lots of considerations, pros and cons there. Of course, access to an enormous customer base, particularly in the US, with 50% of searches started there. Huge pro, but there's a trade-off.
Kind of a subtlety there as well, right? Nike coming off of Amazon, you could always find Nike products on Amazon before they were officially on, and now they're officially off, you'll still be able to find Nike products on there. So what are they really achieving by coming out of that space?
But also too, when you get to be a brand the level of Nike and it's one of my pet peeves with Brits that mispronounce Nike. I had to do it as the token American. So when you get to the level where you've built a brand such as Nike that is recognized in such a global capacity, I think that your challenges become fundamentally different than, say, this gentleman's here who's having to compete with Amazon, right? And I think that Nike can come and go and do as they please. Because they are Nike, and we will continue to buy Nike products, and we will continue to run that search query or go directly to a Nike.com, right, to buy their products. But I think the challenge lies, though, what happens when you don't have that globally recognized brand? And I think that's when, as you were saying, Mike, you've got to get a bit more creative and really integrate your marketing strategy and make sure that you're thinking about the customer journey end to end and across all of the various touch points. How can I create the best possible experience with my brand, regardless of the channel that person's interacting with my company on? And then ultimately hoping that A, you've impacted them from a brand perspective, but B, you've created such a positive experience for them that they then transact with you.
I think we've got the next panel, Amazon. That's measurement.
It's a
Amazon
ASO right now is a really big topic.
That's very
being
good.
had.
I think you have to think about how do you become a brand in your own right, which systems increasingly go directly to you. So therefore, what's your whole funnel strategy, bottom line, to make them do that?
I think the problem in today's day and age as well is that because we live in a world with rapid advancement where things just move at hyper warp speed, we expect to go from 0 to 100 overnight. And I think that people fundamentally miss that you've got to still lay the foundational elements in place in order to build on top of. You don't just all of a sudden wake up one morning and you're the next Amazon of the world. Like, there was a lot of foundational work that went into that brand building and that strategy to actually get them to where they are. I think we live in a world where immediate and instant gratification is what we're always after, but we forget that there's a lot of hard work that has to go into building an organization.
we were spoilt for a long time
Yeah.
with organic SEO. I mean, when I started working this, I remember talking about Nike. It's about 2005. They had a flash site at the time, so Nike was outranked by a trainer shop in Bolton. You know, I mean, there's nowhere that should be right. And you know, Google has kind of got it right, and brands are more or less at the position where the brand deserves to be. You know, they kind of recognise that that's got authority and reputation, and it sits where it is. And just because we can't rely on just doing a little bit of trickery with keywords and metadata and a few links to get traffic. We have to start thinking about the whole customer journey and about where our brand fits in.
Yes. Thanks.
Given all this conversation about CRO, tech, SEO, one big question we get asked at M&S all the time is who is doing this well? So one question for you guys would be, who do you think an M&S should be aspiring to be as a brand to be successful in the future of search?
I quite like Skyscanner. I think they have a blog where they talk about their CRO successes. I can't comment too much on what they're doing in terms of SEO, but in terms of experimentation and this kind of culture of fast-moving iteration, they've got a blog where they talk about this is what we're doing in this space, and one of their mantras is fail forward. It's that whole concept that it's okay to make mistakes, and actually you learn from those mistakes. And they've even got sort of badges made up with fail forward on it. So it's kind of like a license for them to say, we are going to iterate and experiment and grow that way, rather than kind of panic and then sort of bolt together loads of changes into one big redesign, and if it doesn't work, we just wasted loads of money. Anyone else?
Anyone else? Yeah, you can duck out that
one. Duck it out this one.
You're off the hook for this one.
I think Nike is doing a great job, but I think interestingly Amazon aren't. When you look at their site, it's terrible from an SEO perspective and a customer journey perspective. It's not a great experience on Amazon, but yet they've built a brand and customers still go there, and you're willing to put up with that, what is pretty shoddy experience. But if you look at Nike, I think it's a really, really nice execution, slick content. They've thought about the journey, the connections between all of the different entities that Nike has become known for, about their football players, their trainers, the things that they are involved in. They are clearly signposting to Google, this is our knowledge graph, this is who we're about, this is what we stand for as a brand.
I'm going to add in two other ones in there without much context, but to have a look at. I think Gymshark are doing quite an interesting job as a disruptor a little bit. Their site's interesting, but also the things that they're doing in social as well are quite interesting. And another one I think is quite interesting from a user experience perspective, at least. You may agree or disagree, Joe, but is Zara. Where they've really reformatted the website to look and feel almost like a social feed. And you scroll through it as opposed to going across it. I think it's quite an interesting one too. We had another question here on the left.
Yeah, just basically in the context of customer lifetime value, how do you see SEO in 2020 influencing that? And I think more of an observation than a question. I think that's where UX needs to be integrated with each channel. I remember I was at a talk with Nike, and they were saying an app customer for them is worth 5x more from a lifetime value perspective than a desktop customer. So I guess the question for me is like how SEO will influence lifetime value in coming year.
I think it's a tough question. The SEO traffic on the surface is generally more trusted than paid for traffic. So I think continuing to heavily invest in the development of SEO should be a no-brainer. I think the challenge with that question is Google have made it so much harder to understand what is happening with the data and pick apart that and connect the dots. Every year they're taking away some piece of data and asset for you to really make sense of what's happening in that space.
Yeah, so part of that is that initial first time. You're not going to get any customer for a lifetime if they land on a page that's broken when they first come in, or that has a terrible user experience first time round. So yeah, some of it comes down to, from an SEO point of view, it's just making sure you're not serving customers an awful first time experience to even get them in the long run. Yeah, if you keep appearing in search, that's got its own benefits. So yeah, constantly retaining customers, but yeah, you can't do anything with a customer that has an awful experience on your site. Persuade them to stay a bit longer. Persuade them. Is there a reason they need to log in as well?
That's the key thing as far as lifetime values go, because of reliability of what's going to happen with cookie links and so on. When you talk about lifetime, we're obviously talking over multiple months or years. The onus is to get them to register, to log in, to become an advocate of the brand in some way. And you've got to give them a good reason to do that. So it's going to be whether it's kind of discounts or access to free content. Getting those visitors to become part of the experience is going to be key, because then obviously once they're signed in, you can measure their activity over a longer period of time.
Well, obviously I'm slightly biased to technical SEO as opposed to off-page, but I think that's where a lot more emphasis needs to be placed when you're talking about the practice of SEO, right? Is your technical on-page elements that are impacting that customer experience, right? So if your site is loading at speeds that are optimal for that user, if they're able to find what they are looking for because you've got an optimal on-site search experience for them, if your site architecture and navigation is easy for them to find what they're looking for, that all feeds into that user experience that they're having. You not only get that customer to transact the first time around, but they've had a positive experience with you and they will keep coming back. And I think that all of these technical elements are really going to be requiring a lot more emphasis moving into 2020 because of, again, the changing landscape of the search, the necessity around structured data and entities, and thinking about all of these technical elements that actually sit inside of your website and are part of the responsibility of the SEO. And it's that stat around the Nike app versus the Nike desktop one is interesting, but if you think about once they've captured a user inside of that app and they've had that positive experience, why would you ever go back to the desktop and search for Nike.com or run a Google search for Nike? You would just keep going back to that app because they've made it easy for you to find what you're looking for immediately and efficiently.
Skyscanner is another example.
They're a prime example of that with their app as well.
You've teed up the final question quite nicely, which is moving into 2020. So for each of you, and very quickly, because we want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we're pretty much on the hour. What's the one thing going into 2020 that you will be focusing on the most, and that you'd recommend people focus on or learn more about? What's the one thing? You can go in order. Joe, you look ready to go? Yeah.
For the brand, if we're seeing anything, it's that putting all of your eggs in one basket with Google is dangerous. So put your brand at the heart of your vertical. Make sure that all of those experiences are seamless, whether it's on your app, whether it's on your YouTube video, whatever. Make sure all of your assets are being leveraged and connected as effectively as possible.
Yeah, for me, it's all about effectively organising your data and making sure that if you are building a brand, you are improving your user experience, that you're actually measuring the success or failure of that. If you're not measuring the success or failure, then there's no way to actually go forward into the future and actually improve things. That is difficult, being said, because a lot of these companies have separate walled gardens, but trying to amass all that data and make decisions based on that is going to be the key in 2020.
For me, it's going to be de-siloing SEO, so working alongside paid search, training the whole business on SEO is something we're doing at the moment. Just getting the message out there. We're not the only SEO practitioners in our business. Everyone touches it day to day, and we need to get that message out more and more.
So CRO is in the process of rebranding itself, if you like, as experimentation. Mm-hmm. So I like to think that 2020 is the year that maybe experimentation finally goes mainstream. Having said that, I've been saying that for 10 years. So, but I think there are still far few companies doing, having an iterative, dynamic approach to design. And I'm hoping that more people can take this up in the next decade.
Keep saying it, Joe.
Keep saying it.
I think like, actually all of you guys have important points, but being a marketing director myself and actually like owning the entirety of our marketing strategy, I couldn't agree more with Joe. Is about in today's day and age to compete, you've got to build a brand and you've got to create positive customer experiences, because at the end of the day, A, that's what gains you customers, and B, that's what keeps them coming back. So I think, yeah, brand building is going to be something that everyone is going to have to really put emphasis on.
Good. Very good. So in summary, build a brand, organise your data, de-silo SEO, experiment, and give a positive customer experience by building your brand wherever it is. Good. Thank you very much to our panel. Please, round of applause for that.